channel. Today we are talking about making teddy bears. This is the second video. The first video I went over all of the supplies and fabrics and batting and stuffing and noses. I went through all of that in the first tutorial. So in this tutorial we're actually going to cut fabric and we're going to make the teddy bear with 1 yard of fabric. You can use cotton fabric, fleece fabric, flannel fabric. You can use minky, you can use just about any fabric that you want to. You can do fur. And so the pattern is going to remain the same regardless of what kind of fabric you choose. So let's get started. Let's cut the fabric and make this guy. Oh, and I also want to tell you that the bow tie, I am making the bow tie in a separate tutorial. It's going to be too long to make that in the end of this video. So check out the other video to make the actual handmade bow tie. All right, let's get started. Okay, so this is how the pattern is going to look when it comes. And you're going to take out the template. And this is going to show the bear template that you need to make the bear. And so what you need to do is cut out the bear shapes. There's 2 pieces and that's all you're going to need for this pattern. So there's 2 pieces and you're going to want to cut them out. And then once you cut them out, I suggested in a different video, and I was just going to show you what I meant by that. I suggested to cut out this, the templates in muslin, because once you trim around them over and over again, it'll tend to get skewed, and you'll make the actual pattern start to look skewed and off after you trim around it a multitude of times. So once you cut it out, then take your template, put it on top of a piece of muslin, and then cut that out. You know, you can just basically trace it onto muslin and then cut that out. Then you can use this for a while, and then after you've made several teddy bears, if it starts to get skewed and you know look chopped up and funny, then you can just recut another one. Then I just write in Sharpie what it says on the pattern, and then I'm going to use these to make my bears. So they're easier to pin through, and to kind of, you can press them, and if they start to get wrinkly you can press them, and I just like to use these. So anyway, that's what we're going to do now. And so we're going to talk about using the templates to cut out your fabric. And so first off, we're going to do that on the 1 yard bear. So we've just quilted or stabilized 1 yard of fabric, and then I'm going to show you how to cut them out. Okay, so this is what you see in the pattern. This is the pumpkin fabric that's shown in the pattern, and this is just 1 yard. And so what you're going to do is, I did this on purpose on a directional fabric so I can talk about it. So your pumpkins are going up and down. And if your fabric is not directional, then it is not necessary to pay as much attention. But if you're using a fabric that is, you know, NFL or you know, a college team, or you know, cheerleading or something, that the design is directional, you will want to pay attention to how you cut your templates out. So this particular fabric we're going to take and we're going to just fold it in half so that the design is the same on both sides. So they're going, the pumpkins are going up and the pumpkins are going up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our template, and let's start with the front. Well, actually, I guess I'll show you both of them. So so we're going to lay on the template. It says fold up here. It points towards this side of the bear, and it says fold this direction for the 1 yard bear. So that means we want the fold to be right there on the belly and the face of the bear. And this is the back, so that's the back of the head and the back of this part. Okay, so what that means when I say to cut 2 mirror images, that means that when we pin it, I'm going to grab some pins, and that means when we pin, I'm just going to pin it to the first layer, the top layer, so you can see what we're talking about with the mirror image. So I'm going to pin it there, I'm going to pin it here, And then I'm going to pin the leg. I guess I'll pin right here too. Okay. So we're going to cut that out, and I usually try to get it up to the very top. It's a little bit too high right this minute, but I'm just showing you. So when I say mirror image, we're going to cut this out this way. And then when we open it up, then you're going to have a bear cut out going this way, and then another bear cut out that way. So you're going to have two mirror images. All right. So now we're going to fold it back, and so I'm just showing you what I mean by a mirror image. Okay, so now we're going to put the back. The back piece is a little bit longer than the front piece. So I usually try to do that one on the top, and you can curve it over just a little bit. That's so I usually push the feet over just a little bit, so it's not completely up and down, but the pumpkins will still be facing up. And then I put my other bear piece down so that this side is, the fold side is over here. And so then we're going to just pin a couple of pieces, and I'm pinning all the way through all of the sides now. Okay, so we have got all of our bear is on fabric. We don't have any parts that are sticking up. And then now we're going to do the other piece, and we've got plenty of room down below. And so we're going to pin him or her. Okay. These are my little cat pins from the Fat Quarter shop. I got the spooky box, and the little black cat pins came in there. They're very cute. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to cut out these two. So it's very simple. We're going to take 1 yard of fabric, we're going to fold it in half, we're going to put our templates down, make sure they're not cutting or they're not hanging off anywhere, and then we're going to cut them. Okay, when I'm cutting, I use my Ginger scissors. These are my favorite, and a rotary cutter. So you'll just have to see which one you prefer. Sometimes on the long pieces, I'll take my rotary cutter and then I'll go up and not go all the way around. And so sometimes I use the rotary cutter for the long edges, but I will use the scissors when I'm doing the darts and coming up and around this. So I usually use both of them. And so I'm going to cut. So we have them all cut out, and now I'm going to take all my scrap pieces. There are probably enough scrap pieces on the bottom if you were going to make like a little small zipper pouch. There's usually 2 pieces down on the bottom. If you were going to make a little quilted pouch with a zipper, there is enough to probably do a small little piece right down there. So just a little tidbit of just a little extra. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what the mirror image looks like. So take our pins out. Okay, so we have our 2 mirror images for the front. So like that. And then we have our mirror images for the back. So we're going to remove our little black kitties. Whoa. Okay. And then our 2 mirror images for the back. So this is the back. You can always tell because it's got the long tail on it. So the fronts don't have that long tail. So if you get them all together and mixed up, you can always tell that the ones with the long little tail thing is the back. Okay, so what we're going to do next is, see, this is the one that had the wool batting. I wanted to point that out. So it's going to be a little bit thicker than the other one that I showed earlier. Okay, so what we're going to do is, the next thing that we do is for the back, we're going to fold them back together. And we're going to look on our backing. And it says, leave open to stuff. And so we're going to put that right there. And it does not have to be exact. So I'm going to put a pin here and another pin right there. And so if you put the pin down here, it would still be okay. So this is just a general space. I leave it generally open that big because I can fit my hand through it. If you have really tiny hands and you want to make it a little bit smaller, you can, because you're going to have to stitch this, hand stitch this closed in the end. So that's what I like to do. I like to be able to put, because I can get my whole hand through that spot. So that's the reason why I have that space there. So if you want to adjust that, you can. So this is the back, and we're going to pin it one more time up here. And so what we're going to do is, when we go to the sewing machine, I'm going to show you how to do the 2 darts. And then when we go to the sewing machine, we're going to stitch from here down and down to the end. And that's the only sewing that we're going to be doing for the back part. And actually, I said that wrong. We're going to go from here down to here, and we're going to stop at this pin, and we're going to back stitch, and then we're going to start again at this pin, and we're going to go down and back stitch. So we're going to leave this part open. And now for the front, so that's all we're going to do with the back. And so the front part, we're going to lay them together. And so because this fabric is black, it is, the eyeballs that I use are black also, so it is not going to show up as well. I noted in the pattern when you're making the patchwork one to pay attention to where your eyeballs and your nose are going to be located in case you want to put lighter fabric. So just keep that in mind. Oh, my basting stitch is still there. I can pull that out. But just keep that in mind, that your eyeballs, if you don't want to, so I use these little black ones. If you wanted to, for instance, maybe do little white buttons, you could do that. If you wanted to do something that's lighter that would show up better on a darker fabric, you can certainly do that. So just keep that in mind as you're picking fabric and all of that stuff. So here's what we're going to do for the head. So we're going to lay that there. And oh, you know what? Sometimes when I do them, I won't get it cut just perfect the first time around, and then I go back through and I cut it a little bit better. So that probably just happened when I was doing the cutting. So just go back and look. That means that probably this side's the same. Let's see. Nope, this side looks just fine. Okay, so the front, we're gonna need an eyeball and a nose. So our nose, we're gonna mark right here. And since like I said, since this is a dark fabric, I'm gonna use pins. You could also use a friction pen, or a lot of times, honestly, I'll use a Sharpie. And what I'll do is I just go to the back side and I just touch on top of where the space is, and then it'll make a black spot on the end, and then I'll use a Sharpie for the nose. And then, so I do, oh, you can use a friction pen. I know Sharpies in the sewing room are probably a bad idea, but I do that. So there's that. So anyway, so where the hole is, we will fold it, and we're gonna make a little snip right there, and then we're gonna put the eyeball through. And the nose we're going to leave open. We're just gonna leave the pin in there so that we can use that for that space for later when we do the nose. So the eyeballs, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a little slit, a little snip. I know it feels wrong. And since this is thick, thicker, I'm gonna get my seam ripper. So when I did the snip, it just snipped through the backing piece of fabric, not through the batting piece. So, so right there, we're gonna make another little tiny, tiny snip. And when you're doing this, you wanna use, I usually use my smaller scissors so that I don't accidentally cut too much. Okay, so these are my eyeballs. So we're gonna need 2 eyeballs and 2 of those little guys. So the eyeball is gonna go through the little hole that we just created. Oops. I always say, I don't think I've ever done a video where I don't drop something. So you're gonna push the eyeball through the front of it, into the back, and then we're gonna use our Fabric Fusion glue. Probably should shake it up. And I usually just do, whoa, a little dollop, maybe a little bit less than I just used. So there's that, and then I just put the little, it snaps into place, and then you have an eyeball. And so that's where the nose is gonna go, and so we need to do it again over here. So we're gonna put our teddy bear there. And then you can also, one of the other ways that I do it is I'll take it and just fold it right there. And like if it's a lighter fabric, I can fold it right there, and then you can just use your friction pen to make a mark right there on it and then cut that. But because it's darker, we're gonna flip it over to the back, make a mark with our pen. There's a little mark now. And then we're gonna fold it in half. Make a little snip. Oh, actually, I think I got it through the front that time. And then we're gonna push it through the little hole. And the smaller the hole, the better. There, it's pushed through. And we're gonna do our glue. I usually just do a little small spot on either end, and then snap your little back on, and then we have our second eyeball. So now our 2 mirror images, that'll show you what our bear's gonna look like. So it's gonna go together like that and open like that. We have our 2 mirror images together. So these are both of the fronts. And then we're gonna take our pins, and I usually just pin once in the face, once right here around the neck, and then down on the bottom. But we have to do the darts, and I'm going to, normally I do the darts first, but I was gonna try to do all the sewing at the machine at the same time. So that's what you're gonna do, and then we're gonna sew from here all the way down. We're gonna stop at the nose. We can put the nose in there and back stitch, and then we're gonna sew down to the neck, and then we're gonna sew down all the way around to the bottom. Okay, so we have the back and the front. So before we sew them together, what we're gonna do is we're gonna sew the darts. And so we're gonna take them good, so there's the V from the bottom dart, and you're just gonna put them good sides to good side. And it's not gonna match up exactly, and that is okay. And so you can pin it if you want to, or you can just hold it. And then I just stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I back stitch, and then I back stitch again. And then that's going to make your back dart. The other side. And then the same thing to the feet. So the feet are just going to go good side to good side, and then stitch. And then this toe. Okay, so now you have your 4 darts done, and then I'll repin this. Actually, I'm going to put the pin on the front side so I can see it. Okay, so, oh, you know what? This is the back side. So the pin is going to need to go. So I'm going to stop at this pin, and I'm going to stop at this pin. And this is going to leave our space to stuff. So we're going to start on the top, and I usually stitch 1/4 inch, between 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch. It's not, doesn't matter as long as you just get both edges. And I back stitch at the top. I back stitch at the neck area, and then I kind of pivot. Okay, now I've back stitched there, cut my thread, and then I'm going to go down to the other cat, back stitch, and back stitch at the bottom. So that's what it's going to look like on the bottom now. There's your hole to stuff. And then that is your bare back. Okay, now it is time for us to do the front too. So we have our 2 mirror images, good side to good side. We've put our eyeballs on both sides, and we have it pinned. We did not sew our darts for the front yet. So we have 4 darts. We have 2 here and 2 here. So I'm just going to leave it together and sew the darts. And if one dart is sticking out just a little bit too much, it's okay. Ultimately, it is going to be just fine if there's just a smidge. So this is a little bit less tedious than when you're quilting. So put our good side to good side there for this dart. I'm back stitching on both sides when I start and when I finish. And so I would try to match up your seams, but if they don't, it is not going to be the end of the world. Okay, so now we have our darts sewn together. And so we have our two fronts pinned together, and we're gonna start at the top and then we're gonna stop at the nose. So I back stitch. Make sure your two sides are together. Make sure your raw edges are together. Okay, so I back stitched for the nose. I haven't cut the thread yet. I'm gonna pull my little kitten out, and then I'm gonna cut the thread. Then I'm gonna move my needle just a smidge, and then I'm gonna put the needle back in. I'm gonna start sewing and back stitch again. And I'm gonna sew down to the neck and back stitch. And so what that does is it leaves a space. Here, I'll cut the thread and show you. So that is gonna leave a space where your nose is gonna poke through that hole. So you can see where your stitch line is right there. Your nose is gonna poke through that hole when we get to that point. Okay, so I back stitched and I acted like I didn't stop. So now I'm gonna keep going. Again, just make sure your raw edges are together. And since this is the front, we're not stopping and starting. So we're just gonna go all the way down to the bottom. I have my stitch length at a 2. That's pretty good. That's probably what I usually do my bears at. And so now you can take your pins out. And so now we almost have a full bear front. Okay, so there is where his nose is going to be. And where we have made that little spot, we're gonna get a nose and a back. Okay. So we're going to take our nose, and I'm going to get up in front of the camera so you can see. I'm going to take the nose, and you're going to, so there's your dot that we made from when we cut it out, and you're going to stick the nose through and push it through. And so there, it's coming through, and then I leave my seams open, and then I put the glue in there. Oops, I touched the camera. All right, so now we're gonna put the glue, just a couple little dots of glue. And then we're gonna take our little end and push it through. And so since there's a, so that's why I keep the seam open, because it's a little more bulk. And then once you flip it around, then you can turn your nose the direction that you want it. I think noses go this way. That's how I always do it, but you can do your nose however you want to do your nose. All right, so now we have 2 eyeballs and the nose. And so I want to also mention, if you're going to do a label on your bear, now is the time to do that. So once you get your bear front sewn together, the label will go right here. If you want to embroider a label that says, you know, Mom or Dad or I love you or whatever, I do an embroidery label. I put it on a 4x4 frame, and then I press this flat, and then I stitch it on there right now before I put the bear together. Okay, so now you have a bear front and a bear back. And so at this point, like I said a minute ago, you to put your label here, or your embroidery thing if you want to put a label on the front of him. But what we want to do is do a little bit of clipping. You need to have a nice set of scissors that are really sharp, and what you want to do is you want to clip the seams, especially the neck and the really curvy areas. And you're not stitching the seam, you're just stitching so that that fabric that's in the middle that's pulling a little bit will help it not pull. So when you stitch that, when you pull that way, when you get ready to put your bear together, his neck won't be pulling quite so much. And you can do that around the seam, the curve. I don't usually need to, unless if you are putting an embroidery patch on the front, you might want to go ahead and clip it, and then you'll press it so that the seam is laying flat. And remember, this one we did the wool batting, so it's a little bit fluffier than if you just did interfacing, so it'll lay flatter. So if you're going to do that, I would maybe snip it a little bit and then press them open. And otherwise, that's the only snipping that I normally do on the front, is just where his neck is. And the back, at this stage, that is the only snipping that I do on the back also. Is a little bit on the neck. So that just helps right there where your neck seam is a little bit. Okay, so now we are ready to put him together. It's really simple. All right, so here's your back and your front. So we're gonna lay them good side to good side. Just like that, and then you're gonna go around and pin the entire area around him. So you're gonna wanna start with your pin. I usually try to nest those two seams on the top. Again, since this has wool batting, it's gonna be a lot thicker. And I just pin right there at the top. And then I pin at the corner. So you're going to want to pin at his neck on both sides. I usually try to do, you can't really pin too much. So I always pin at all the intersections. Here, here, and then you're going to want to pin on the outside of his arms, the armpit, all of the creases. You're going to want to pin all those there. And then I'll show you on the bottom, you're going to want to nest the bottom. So let me grab a couple pins. Here's my pins. Okay, so when we do this part, we're going to want to, I try to nest these two, but it may not be perfect with the wool batting. So we're going to pin it there, and then these areas will pin, and these areas will pin. So you're going to put your two edges there, pin right there, and then your other over here. And pin there. And then pin your edge. And so when you pin, oh, there I go again, dropping stuff. I try not to pin where I'm gonna have to take them out. I try to pin the inside of the body part so that I can just stitch around it without having to move my pins around too much. So you can even go a little farther in like that. And then I usually nest my 2 seams at the toes. And then that's just what you're doing. So you're just going to go around and pin the whole thing, and making sure that you keep your edges together when you're pinning. If, for instance, there is a little bit, when I cut this on the video, I didn't do a very good job because I didn't go back and cut it again. Usually I cut the first part and then I cut the second part, but at any rate, it is okay, and I sometimes do things on purpose so I can show you on the videos. So if you pin right here and you keep your edge, it is okay if there is, just to keep your edges, because the inside of this is going to be filled up. So it doesn't matter if this edge doesn't match if this edge does. So if you, oops, I hit the camera again, sorry. So if you pin this side in place, it is okay if you make this side then match, because the center of it's going to get stuffed anyway. Okay, so we're going to pin this guy. So there's just a ton of pinning. All the way around. And then once you get all your pinning done, then you're ready to start sewing. Okay, I did want to mention also that, like I said, because I kind of on purpose didn't trim exactly the same around some of the spots, it's okay if you see just a little hair of fabric that you want to trim off. It is okay. I wouldn't trim too much into the pattern, but I mean, if you've got 2 pieces that are almost the same and you want to trim that up to make it easier for yourself, that's okay. Just don't trim too much into the pattern. Okay, so we're going to start on the top, right at the seam. I'm going to put my needle in there, pull my cat pin out, and I'm going to back stitch. So this entire process, I'm going to go around between 1/4 of an inch and 3/8 of an inch. It doesn't have to be exactly, it just want to make sure that you catch both sides when you're stitching. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we have all of our stitching all the way around him done. So we can take all of our pins out. And then what we're gonna do once all the pins are out is we're gonna go around and we're gonna make sure that we didn't miss any corners or miss any edges, and then we can do our trimming. So what I do is I just go around the entire area and I make sure that I got both sides so that I didn't have any places that I missed. Because sometimes it is possible when you're going around. I usually just do about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And it looks like all of mine is fine, but you don't want to flip it inside out and then realize that you have a spot. So now I go around and I take my scissors and I snip around all of the corners. Okay, so now our opening, this is why I leave it big enough so that I can put my hand in it, because I reach up and play a little bit of puppets and I put my fingers through the ears up here into the ears, and then I pull that part through. Then you can take the 2 arms and push them kind of down and through. Same thing with the other arm, kind of down and through. I would try not to do too much tugging on that opening because we did back stitch, but I try not to really handle those stitches too terribly much. Okay, so now he's inside out, and now we just need to get the legs and arms pushed through. Okay, see, our little ears are nice and curved. We want to do that when you go around. If you don't pay attention to try to make your pivots look nice, then you'll end up with all weird looking where they stick out all funny. If you're using Minky, it's not as bad because it's real forgiving, but like this ear is a little wonky. So anyway, all right, and I get this guy out. All right, we have another little paw. Okay, and look, we have a fat little bear. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. I just love them. Okay, so now it's time for the polyfill stuffing. So I get this giant box that's 10 pounds. Okay, so this bear is going to get one of our adorable little bow ties. So I'm going to show you that as soon as we get done stuffing him. So the stuffing part kind of matters, I think. If you don't stuff it enough, they don't look as pretty. I think that it's almost better to overstuff them than understuff them. So I use a lot of the polyfill, and I just really think it looks better. So you can see. So what I normally do is the first thing I do is the ears. So I do just a little bit like this, and I kind of ball it up. I also do the ball it up for the nose. So I stuff the ears. Those two little balls are probably enough for one ear. So I stuff my little ears. I think that's too much. So this will all just be kind of trial and error. So I stuff their little ears, and then you can feel it. And then what I do is I take and I top stitch right from this part to this part on both sides. Okay, so when I say top stitch, I'm going to sew from this part to this part. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be. You could take a ruler and a friction pen if you want to make like a straight line. I don't. I almost kind of make mine a little bit curvy. And then I back stitch at both points. You won't know. I mean, you can't really tell either way. If you look at the other bears, this one has more kind of a straight line. Some of them have more curved. It just depends on my mood, I suppose. Okay, so now this one. All right, and so we just sewed through both sides. Okay, so now it's time to stuff him. So we started off with the ears, and then I do the arms and the legs. So it doesn't matter which one you do next, arms or legs. But I do the legs, and you want to push the stuffing all the way down into the toe on both sides and do a lot of it. And you have to do just small little bits into the hole. But I start and I push the stuffing all the way down into the toe. And then down into the heel. and stuff the legs real good. And so you just want to make sure that there's no gaps and, you know, droopy spots on your legs. So now we'll turn him and do these toes. So you want to push it all the way back down to the toe first before you kind of start stuffing the leg, otherwise it's hard to get it all the way down there. And make sure you kind of push down to the corners so that it gets it nice and full and flat. And I think that's kind of what I was saying before. Sometimes we understuff them, and I think that if you don't get it really good and into the corners and down into the toes, then after time they're going to look terrible because the stuffing doesn't stay fluffy forever. And it'll start to look flat and matted if you don't get them really good in there. So you want them to kind of be like hard, you know, full of stuffing, hard. And then I go into the fold of the leg, and then I stop and go to the arms. And you can kind of ball it up for the arms to get it all the way down to the very end of your arm. Okay, that's a lot. And then keep stuffing until you get to the little armpit. And then it's all right, and then go down to the end of this arm. And like I said before, those little chopstick looking things, there's usually one in these boxes. I assume they're still there. There always have been those. I have some in my drawers from previous boxes. I'll pull one out in a minute. But there's usually one of those. I think there's one right here. It might be the drawer that the camera's right next to. I'll get it out in a minute. Okay, but once you get your arms done, then you want to make a big ball for the nose. And kind of ball it up. And stick your hand in there and then push that into the nose part. And then you can keep stuffing into the top of the head and behind the nose. And once you get your head kind of starting to look full, then you can take another little small ball and kind of poke it up and put it in the very front where the nose is. And then it'll keep, sometimes the nose will look sort of caved in if you don't get enough stuffing in there. So just keep making balls and sticking them up towards the nose part until you get a nice firm front of your face so that it looks nice and firm. And then I usually don't do too much on the neck part. I mean, I obviously stuffing up there, but it starts to go more towards his belly. And then once you get a little bit in there, then you'll want to start doing the joints. You'll want to put a couple of balls in the joints just to make them nice and so that it sits. If you don't put enough, it'll end up going like that, where the legs kind of flap open. And so then I just turn him upside down and just stuff. But you want to push a bunch towards his belly so that you have a nice a nice full belly. And then just keep stuffing down into the center. And then once you can feel that you're pretty full, then I just tuck a little bit to either side of the little butt. And then you're ready to do your ladder stitch. And sometimes when I'm doing the ladder stitch, I'll just poke a little bit in there as I'm sewing it if I feel like there's not enough. So there's our sweet little bear. And so I usually kind of sort of adjust him and wiggle him a little bit so that his legs kind of stay going forward. And then there's the back. And so when you do your ladder stitch, that'll close them up right there. And like I said, you could do your label in there if you wanted to. But I usually just do mine in the leg. But there's your ladder stitch, and we'll show you that in a minute. And then the bow tie, I'll show you that in a second, but the piece that goes around his neck, I didn't put any Velcro on him yet because I wanted to make sure it was the right size. And so then that way you can put it, well, that way you can put it on him and see where your Velcro needs to go and how much Velcro you want to do, and then you can add your Velcro and stitch it together. And so for now, I'll just pin his little bow tie. Isn't he cute? Oh my gosh, I love him. And so if their arms are doing weird things, or if they're sticking out a little bit, it might be because of the stuffing that's in the joint. So you can kind of adjust it. And sometimes they just have little personalities and they're left-handed. So anyway, there's our stuffed little bear. And then let's make a bow tie.